Welcome to the London Property Podcast, your go-to source for navigating the complex and ever-changing London real estate market. Our digital marketplace provides informative and educational content from industry leaders through podcasts and videos. We cover various aspects of the real estate experience, including buying and selling, finance, law, tax, construction, design, and more. Join us as we delve into the latest trends and developments in the market and gain valuable insights from our panel of experts.
Hello and welcome to London Property, the home of super prime. I'm your host Farnaz Fazaipour, and today we're pleased to have George Seater back on the show for the second part of our discussion with him about insuring second home versus principal home. George, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Farnaz. Nice to be here.
In the first episode, we spoke to you about private client construction, where you taught me quite a few things. So let's see what you're going to teach me today. So just for our listeners who may not have listened to the first episode that we did with you, can you just tell us a little background about what makes you someone that we can learn so much from in the insurance space?
So I've been involved in the private client insurance sector for the last 20 years, always as a broker, initially working for other people. I was part of a very successful team that built Stackhouse Poland over 15 years. I then ran the insurance business for Savills as part of SPF Private Clients, and I've been one of the original founding partners of Vision since they launched in 2017. So yeah, I've been around the block a bit in the insurance world.
You're the man who keeps everybody safe. So we have you on the show, obviously, because you've already helped some of our members successfully in getting insurance, so thank you for that. And today, let's talk about second homes versus principal homes and the nuances, because a lot of people probably assume insurance is insurance. But let's talk about what's the difference between the two.
So I suppose it goes back to how an insurer understands the risk, and there are different risks that are posed by a property that's occupied as a primary residence, which is the more straightforward traditional way of insurance, versus a second home, and that could be within the second home space. That could be a client who's got a London pied-à-terre and a house in the country, or increasingly it could be, particularly with London, an international family who has a property in London in addition to other properties around the world, but the property in London isn't their main residence. It may well be that from a tax perspective they can only be in the UK for less than 90 days a year. So in that situation, the insurance side of things is important because they can't tell the insurance company that the property is their main residence if it isn't. That would invalidate any policy that's in force. And increasingly, there are far fewer insurers that specialise in covering properties that are second homes or holiday homes.
And what do insurance companies require for second homes?
So there's a couple of increased risks that need to be managed. Obviously, if you've got a property that isn't your main residence, the biggest area of concern for insurers is how those unoccupied periods are managed. And the biggest thing really that they're worried about is what happens if there's a leak, from a pipe or escape of water or whatever, that goes unnoticed for a period of 2 or 3 weeks whilst the property is empty. The level of water that could come out into a property from a leak over that period of time could cause huge amounts of damage. So that's the biggest thing that insurers worry about when they're talking about second homes or holiday homes. There's an increased risk also from a theft perspective. You've got a property that's empty for long periods of time and it isn't part of a well-managed block, or there isn't regular checks on that property, then it's more at risk from being broken into. The issue of squatters becomes more relevant. So there are a number of kind of specialist insurers that we work with in that sector, but it becomes a kind of key area of how you manage those void periods when there's no one living at the property.
Which brings me on to the subject of property managers. So presumably you have come across, I know this is becoming more common to have property managers that actually manage second homes, fill up the fridges, switch on the lights and do all that kind of things. So can you tell us about some of those services that you use in order for the owners to be protected and their insurance to be valid and not invalidated
Sure.
because of it.
I mean, we've probably gone a stage beyond that in a sense that in order for us to obtain cover for a client where we know that probably more relevant for a holiday home than a weekend home, because obviously from a weekend home perspective, the clients are going to be there most weeks. So that manages the unoccupancy risk. But for those clients where there's a property and there's a chance that the property would be empty for 30 days or more, it's normally a requirement of the policy that the property would be checked on a weekly basis. So, that checking of the property requires either the client to do it or an agent appointed on the client's behalf. So we're constantly making referrals and recommendations to property management firms so that they can pick up those weekly inspections that the insurer will require. And equally, the insurer would require that there's a record made of those inspections, so that if there were a claim, particularly if it's a claim for escape of water, that the client could demonstrate that they'd done all they could to manage the risk, as best as possible.
Yeah, we've come across some really good building managers, and what they do is, when I say building managers, I mean the people who are actually managing the building with multiple units in it. If someone's going away, they actually turn off the water mains to that particular unit, which is a really good preventative measure. But there's also key holding companies that you could use for this kind of thing, which is a simpler version of getting the inspection done, and also you've got someone who's holding your keys. I
suppose the challenge is, yes, in an ideal world, every time the property is left empty, if the water could be turned off, it manages that escape of water risk well. The challenge is that quite often clients are reluctant to do that. They want to be able to use the property when they want to use the property. They don't necessarily want to have to come back and find the stopcock to make sure that the water's turned on. So it's always a question of managing the kind of client requirements with the insurer requirements, and making sure that that whatever process the insurer wants to be followed isn't too onerous. Interestingly, we saw an amazing development of properties recently at Cavendish Square, where there was a building control panel by the door of each apartment, and when the client leaves, they can just switch the property to away mode, which then automatically stops the flow of water into the property, and then when they return, they just flip it back on to occupied. And I thought that was a really clever bit of kit. And obviously in that situation, because it's a new development, you can install those things at source, which will then make the management of those properties much easier. Be interesting actually, if you look at some of the developments in London in recent years, I wonder whether some of the top apartments at places like Battersea and so on that have had such a high percentage of overseas purchasers have actually incorporated some of those kind of clever tech solutions.
Yeah, no, I think managing property ownership for people has to become a lot more seamless. And I think with technology and new developments, this is going to just keep improving. And one thing that we've dealt with for years is in tenancy agreements. You say it was 30 days. We always had in the tenancy agreements, if you're leaving the property unoccupied for 28 days, you need to, make sure that the amount of times I've had to explain this to people. Why are you telling me how to use my rental property? And it's like, well, because the insurance will be invalidated if you don't. So it is something that people should really be aware of. So George, thank you very much for sharing with us the differences between the second homes and the principal homes. And we look forward to speaking to you again and getting more insight from you.
Thanks very much, Farnaz. It's been great to be involved.
For our listeners, if you are a member, please head over to the Experts Directory and log in to chat to George directly. For other listeners, if you need to get in touch with George, you can send us an email and we can see how we can help you.
Thanks for tuning in to our latest episode of the London Property Podcast. Head over to our website where you can browse our exclusive network of top experts driving the market. As a member, you'll have direct access to our experts and their networks. Our award-winning content will help you choose the right professionals for your needs and make informed decisions about your investments. Personal recommendations are a powerful tool in connecting with trusted professionals. Let us introduce you to the right people to help you achieve your real estate goals. Contact us now to learn more about becoming a member and gaining access to these valuable resources, or joining our directory of experts.